I never thought a man like me would be sitting on a pile of money, not that kind anyway. I wasn't broke, but I was definitely the type who watched gas prices tick up and down before deciding whether to fill the tank or just top it off. I'd spent the last decade of my life building a modest career in tax consulting, helping small businesses make sense of deductions, retirement contributions, and the ever-changing mess that is U.S. tax law. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. I had my routines. I had Claire. Then Uncle Ray passed. I always knew he was doing well. He'd bought some land in Arkansas after retiring from the oil industry and started a small vineyard, more hobby than hustle. We hadn't been close in recent years, but he never married, never had kids. I figured everything would go to charity or some obscure foundation. But nope. His attorney called me out of the blue one Thursday morning and said 5 words that flipped my life upside down. "You're the sole beneficiary, Nathan." At first, I didn't believe him. I thought it was a scam. But a week later, I was standing in a lawyer's office signing documents that handed me everything: the vineyard, the house, his stocks, a few antique cars, and a generous checking account padded by years of wise investing. Just like that, my life had gone from fine to unreal. The first person I called was Claire. When I told her, there was this long pause on the other end of the line. Not the kind of stunned silence that comes with grief or joy, more like calculation. Like she was lining up chess pieces in her head before she made her next move. Then she exhaled and said, "Wait, are you serious?" "Dead serious," I said, still kind of numb. "It's all mine. Ours, I guess." She let out a laugh that sounded a little too bright. "Nathan, this is insane. Oh my God. This changes everything." She came home with champagne that night. Not the usual $10 bottle either. She bought the good stuff, the kind you only see behind glass at the liquor store. She kept saying things like, "Can you imagine what we can do now? And we should fly out there this weekend, see the land for ourselves." And I'll admit it, part of me loved how excited she was. Claire's always had this spark, this way of making things feel cinematic, even when they weren't. When we met, I was the practical one. She was the one who talked me into salsa lessons and weekend road trips, the one who left sticky notes on the fridge that said, "You're my favorite nerd." I loved her for that. I still did. But something about the way she said "we" so quickly, so easily, it gave me pause. She didn't even ask about Uncle Ray. "No, how are you feeling?" No talk of grief. Just forward momentum. Excitement. Money. I brushed it off at the time. Who wouldn't be thrilled? It wasn't until the chain that I started really questioning things. About 2 weeks after the inheritance was finalized, I came home early from a client lunch that got canceled last minute. Claire wasn't expecting me. I let myself in quietly, dropped my briefcase by the door, and headed upstairs. I remember thinking I'd surprise her, maybe we'd grab an early dinner or take a walk. Normal couple stuff. We hadn't done that in a while. I walked into her bedroom and froze. There, on the floor next to the dresser, was a men's gold chain. Thick. Polished. Not cheap. It was the kind of thing you'd see in a music video or on someone who wanted to be noticed. I don't wear jewelry, never have. Claire knows that. I bent down and picked it up, the weight of it unfamiliar in my hand. It looked recently worn. No dust, no tarnish. I turned it over, looking for initials or a tag of something. Nothing. Just a heavy, expensive piece of metal that didn't belong in my home. That's when I heard her footsteps. She came in from the hallway holding a glass of water and froze in the doorway when she saw me holding the chain. For just a second, maybe half a second, something flickered across her face. A flash of tension, like someone caught in a lie mid-sentence. But she recovered fast. "Oh, that must be Tom's," she said, walking toward me like it was the most casual thing in the world. "He came by last week to borrow the hedge trimmer. He must have dropped it when he came in to use the bathroom." "Tom?" I repeated, confused. "Our neighbor Tom?" "Yeah," she said, reaching for the chain. "You know how forgetful he is. He probably didn't even notice it was missing." I handed it over, still trying to process. Why would Tom take his chain off in our bedroom? She didn't miss a beat. "He got sweaty working in the yard," said he didn't want it to get grimy. "I think he set it on the dresser while he washed up. I forgot it was there." I nodded slowly, still not convinced. "You didn't think to mention it?" She gave a soft laugh. "Sorry, babe. It just slipped my mind. You've had a lot on your plate lately." And just like that, she kissed me on the cheek and walked out of the room, chain in hand, like nothing happened. I stood there for a minute, replaying the conversation. The explanation fit, sort of. But not really. Tom and I are friendly, but not come upstairs and use the master bathroom friendly. And even if he had, why take off a chain to use the sink? Why not the guest bathroom? It didn't sit right. But I didn't say anything. I didn't push. Why? Because I was scared of the answer. I had just inherited a small fortune. Life was supposed to be changing for the better. I didn't want to be the guy who finds a crack in the window the day he buys the house. I told myself to let it go, to believe her. That maybe I was being paranoid. But the seed had been planted. And no matter how much I tried to ignore it, something in me had already shifted. A whisper that said, this doesn't add up. Looking back, I realized that was the moment things really began to unravel. Not the day I got the call from the lawyer. Not the day the check cleared. But that ordinary Tuesday afternoon, holding someone else's chain in my hand while my wife smiled like nothing was wrong. That was the first clue. And I missed it. After the chain incident, things should have gone back to normal, but they didn't. Or maybe they did, and I was just seeing it all differently now. Either way, something had changed. Not just in how I looked at Claire, but in how she started behaving. At first, it was little things. The way she kept her phone on silent all the time. She used to leave it on the kitchen counter, face up while we cooked or watched a movie. Now, it never left her side. Always face down. Always locked. I remember one morning, she was getting ready for what she said was a networking brunch, something with a women's entrepreneur group she had joined. She stood in front of the mirror, curling her hair, wearing a new silk blouse I hadn't seen before. It looked expensive. You look nice, I said. She smiled, barely glancing at me. Thanks. These things are a little more upscale than I thought. Who's going? I asked casually. Just the usual. Some women from the city, a few real estate types. She turned back to her mascara. Why? No reason. Just wondering if I know anyone. She didn't answer. That same week, a pair of designer shoes showed up on our doorstep. She said they were a gift from a friend who owed her a favor. That didn't make sense. Claire's friends don't give $600 shoes as thank you gifts. Still, I didn't press. I just nodded and let it slide. But the unease in my gut kept growing. Her schedule began to drift. Nights out with the girls became more frequent. At first, it was once or twice a week. Then it turned into every other day. Yoga classes. Workshops. Brand building, she called it. She'd come home late, not crazy late, but late enough to make me wonder who these people were and why I never met them. I remember one night in particular. She said she had a business seminar in Little Rock. It was a 2-hour drive, so she booked a hotel and told me she'd be back the next day. I offered to go with her, just tag along, enjoy a night away together. She brushed it off with a laugh. You'd be bored out of your mind, Nate. It's all women talking about social media analytics and product placement. Besides, you've got enough on your plate with the estate stuff. She kissed me goodbye, got in the car, and drove off. I stood there on the porch, watching her taillights disappear down the road, and for the first time, I had the thought, what if she's not going to a seminar at all? The next day, she came back chipper. Too chipper. I asked how it went. She gave me a vague summary about branding strategies and influencer partnerships, then said she was exhausted and disappeared upstairs for a nap. That night, as she was folding laundry in the living room, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, smiled faintly, and quickly swiped it away. I caught just a glimpse, not enough to read the message, but enough to see that it wasn't from one of her usual contacts. What was that? I asked, trying to sound light. Spam, she said without missing a beat. These weird automated things keep popping up. I need to clear my inbox. She deleted the message before I could ask more. That was the third time I'd seen her do that in a week. Later that evening, I got up to get a glass of water and passed by her office. She didn't know I was nearby. Her laptop screen was open. I could see a tab labeled Legal Zoom, Marriage and Asset Protection. I stood there for a second too long. She must have sensed me because she suddenly minimized the window and turned in her chair. Hey, hon, she said too casually. Want to watch something tonight? I nodded, pretending I hadn't seen anything. But my mind was already spinning. Why would she be looking up marriage asset protection? We weren't fighting. We weren't talking about separation. At least, I wasn't. Over the next few days, she started asking more specific questions, little hypotheticals that didn't feel like jokes. Stuff like, if someone gets a gift during a marriage, is it automatically joint property? Or what if you inherited something, could your spouse ever lose it in a lawsuit? Each time, I tried to answer as neutrally as possible. After all, I did taxes. I knew how this stuff worked. But these weren't casual inquiries. These were calculated. She was trying to learn something without tipping her hand. I remember one evening we were in bed, both scrolling our phones. She suddenly turned to me and asked, "Do you think people change when they come into money?" I looked at her. What do you mean? I mean, do you think getting rich even just a little makes people more selfish? Or paranoid? I set my phone down. Is that how I've been acting? She paused like she wasn't expecting me to call her on it. Then she laughed. No. I didn't mean you. I just read an article about lottery winners. Some of them end up miserable. It's wild. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was testing me. Seeing how much I'd figured out. The truth is, I wanted to trust her. I wanted to believe this was just me overthinking everything. But more and more, I was starting to realize that trust without evidence is just hope. And hope, in this case, was getting me nowhere. I started paying closer attention to the small things. Her makeup routine, which had gotten more elaborate. The new clothes, the little splurges she never used to make without asking. The fact that her Google history showed phrases like how to protect your money in a divorce and marital assets versus separate assets in Arkansas. One day, I found a folded receipt from a men's clothing store in her car, a place I knew I'd never shopped at. The name wasn't mine. The size wasn't mine. It wasn't even close. She had no brothers, no male cousins in town. When I brought it up, she said it was a gift for a coworker's birthday. Some guy from her fitness class. I didn't know you were that close, I said. She shrugged. It was a group gift. We all pitched in. I nodded, but my insides twisted. Another name. Another lie I couldn't quite catch her in. And still, I said nothing. Because I was watching. Waiting. I didn't know who he was yet. But I knew there was someone. I knew it the way you know when you've left the stove on. It hums in the back of your head, a subtle panic you try to ignore until the fire starts. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while she slept next to me. I started replaying every conversation. Every unexplained absence. Every shift in her tone. I remembered when she used to reach for my hand during movies. Now she held her phone like a lifeline. The final straw, at least for me, was the day she left her iPad unlocked. I wasn't snooping. I walked in to plug in my phone and noticed her iPad sitting on the table, screen glowing. A tab was open. Not email. Not social media. Maps. It showed directions from our house to a boutique hotel in the city. The date? A week ago. The time? 2:15 p.m., a day she claimed she was at a real estate luncheon. I took a screenshot, emailed it to myself. Closed the tab. Didn't say a word. I had enough puzzle pieces now to know that something was being built behind my back. A separate life. Maybe not fully formed, but active, alive. And the worst part was she was so good at smiling through it. So good at pretending like nothing had changed while everything had. That night, while she brushed her teeth and hummed some tune like nothing was wrong, I looked at her reflection in the mirror and felt a strange mix of dread and detachment. I didn't know the woman humming beside me anymore. But I was about to find out who she really was. I didn't wake up one day and decide to become a spy in my own home, but that's what it felt like. After weeks of half-truths, dodged questions, and mounting red flags, I realized I was living in a house full of shadows. Claire was lying. About what, exactly, I didn't fully know yet. But the shape of it was becoming clearer by the day. So when she told me she'd be gone for the weekend, said she was driving down to Shreveport for a high school reunion, I didn't argue. I didn't ask which high school. I just smiled, kissed her on the cheek, and helped load her suitcase into the trunk. She thanked me with that familiar warmth, the kind that used to make me feel lucky. Now it made me sick. As soon as she pulled out of the driveway, I stepped back inside and locked the door. Then I turned to the one thing I'd been meaning to check for weeks, the home surveillance system. When we moved into this house 3 years ago, I'd installed a modest set of cameras. Just basics: front door, back patio, hallway upstairs, and a motion-triggered one in the driveway. Claire thought they were unnecessary. What are we, the CIA? She joked at the time. Funny, now. I pulled up the system on my laptop, scrolled back through the previous weeks, and braced myself. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly, but I knew what I wasn't supposed to see: another man walking through my front door in the middle of a weekday. It didn't take long. One Thursday afternoon, exactly 2 weeks prior, the footage showed Claire pulling into the driveway at 12:32 p.m. She had told me she was working remotely that day. I remembered it because I'd called her on my lunch break and she answered from the kitchen. What she didn't mention was that 15 minutes later, a black Lexus pulled into our driveway. Out stepped a man I'd never seen before, tall, built, wearing a charcoal suit. He walked with purpose, like he'd done this before. I watched in silence as the door opened. Claire greeted him with a hug. Not the kind you give a friend. Not even the kind you give a family member. This was something else. An asterisk mate. Like the kind of embrace you share when words aren't enough. They disappeared into the house. The camera didn't capture sound, and I didn't have cameras inside, a fact I now deeply regretted. I fast-forwarded. 15 minutes passed. 30. An hour. At one point, I saw movement in the hallway upstairs. Blurred figures. One of them definitely hers. I felt my stomach drop. He didn't leave until 3:41 p.m. 2 hours and 50 minutes. She texted me around that time saying she was just grabbing a quick bite, nothing exciting. I sat there in the dim light of my office, staring at the screen like it might apologize for what I'd seen. My hands were cold. My face felt numb. I rewound the footage, watched it again, just to be sure I wasn't imagining anything. I wasn't. It was real. As real as it gets. And somehow that made it worse. I printed a screenshot T of them on the front porch. Her hand on his chest. His lips close to her ear. I didn't care if it was grainy. I just needed it on paper. Something tangible. Something I could hold when everything else was slipping through my fingers. Next, I opened our shared credit card statements. I checked them before, briefly, but I hadn't been thorough. Now I combed through every line like a detective with nothing left to lose. And there it was, a series of charges that didn't make sense. $637 at Maison de Soie, a boutique hotel downtown. 2 weeks ago on a Wednesday. $340 at Solace Spa and Retreat that same day. $1,195 at Montelori Jewelers, a store known for men's watches. A $76 dinner at a sushi restaurant I'd never heard of. All of them clustered around the days she claimed to be in meetings or grabbing dinner with Kayla, her coworker, who I now realized might not even be real. I cross-checked the hotel's phone number and called, posing as a guest. I told them I'd misplaced a receipt for a reservation under the name Claire Brooks. The woman on the phone hesitated, then said she could email a copy if I gave her the dates. I guessed. 2 weeks ago. Wednesday night. Ah, yes, she said. Here it is. 1 night stay, King Suite, 2 guests. Would you like that emailed? No, I said quickly. That's all I needed. 2 guests. King Suite? I sat back in my chair and let the silence hit me like a wave. She wasn't just sneaking around. She was orchestrating it. Coordinating times. Booking places. Spending our money to lie to my face. I copied all the receipts. Printed each one. Highlighted the most damning details. Then I opened a folder, not metaphorical, but a literal manila folder. I labeled it Claire Evidence. I knew what I had to do next. The following day, while she was still reconnecting with classmates, I met with a divorce attorney named Meredith Shaw. She came highly recommended by one of my clients, someone who'd gone through a brutal split and ended up keeping everything that mattered. Meredith was sharp, composed, and didn't flinch when I told her about the affair. She flipped through the documents I'd brought like she'd seen this all before. First step, she said, is protecting the inheritance. That money and anything derived from it is yours, not marital property. We'll make sure it stays that way. She explained the legal strategy. We'd freeze our joint accounts, update title documents on everything I'd inherited, and file the petition immediately. I wouldn't confront Claire yet. Not until everything was secure. But I wanted her to know. I needed her to see what I saw. So I waited. I spent the rest of the day preparing the house. When Claire came home Sunday night, everything was already in place. I'd moved my things to the guest room but left the master bedroom exactly how she'd left it. The lights were dimmed. The TV was on, paused at the surveillance footage of her and the man walking through our front door. The screenshot TS and receipts were laid out neatly on the coffee table in the living room like an exhibit in a courtroom. On top of the pile, a copy of the divorce papers, signed and dated. I didn't say a word when she walked in. She called out my name once, cheerful, maybe a little tired. I didn't respond. Then she saw the screen. She stopped cold. I watched from the hallway out of her view as she stepped closer to the TV. Her hand went to her mouth. Her shoulders stiffened. Nathan, she called again, voice smaller now. She turned and saw the documents. Her knees buckled slightly as she dropped her purse. What is this? I stepped into view finally. It's everything you've been trying to keep from me, I said. Only now it's mine. Her face went pale. I can explain, she started, but I raised a hand. No. You can't. I'm not here for explanations. I'm here to let you know I know. That's it. She opened her mouth, but I turned and walked upstairs, leaving her frozen in the living room surrounded by the evidence of her betrayal. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Not because I was happy, but because I finally knew the truth. Monday morning arrived with the kind of weight that only follows betrayal. You'd think the hardest part would be discovering the affair, seeing the footage, the receipts, the lies laid bare. But the real challenge came after. It was the silence. The frozen kitchen where Claire hadn't made coffee. The bathroom where her toothbrush still sat next to mine. The weight of her still being there, but the truth leaving no room for her. She didn't try to talk to me that morning. I think she knew there was nothing left to say, or maybe she didn't know where to start. I walked past her in the hallway as she stood motionless, arms crossed, face pale. She opened her mouth, but I didn't stop. I wasn't avoiding the fight. I was focused on the defense. At 9 a.m. sharp, I was in Meredith Shaw's office. She had already reviewed my documents and had a plan mapped out, meticulous, strategic, like someone playing 5 moves ahead on a chessboard. "We're filing today," she said, her voice crisp. "Petition for divorce with an emergency motion to freeze all joint financial accounts. We'll also request an immediate injunction preventing the transfer, withdrawal, or concealment of any marital property." "Claire won't see this coming," I muttered. "She will once it hits," Meredith replied. "Let's stay ahead." We worked for hours. We reviewed bank statements, property deeds, investment portfolios. Everything tied to my inheritance was traced, documented, and declared separate property under Arkansas law. Meredith explained that inherited assets, when kept separate, are protected, but any commingling could put them at risk. "I'm guessing she's already thought about that," I said. "She's been asking questions about gifts, ownership, prenups. She's been doing her homework. Then she won't be surprised when we slam the door." By noon, we had everything filed. The judge granted the emergency orders, our accounts were frozen, and Claire was legally barred from touching anything related to my estate. I walked out of the courthouse feeling like I was finally moving again, like I wasn't just reacting, I was taking back control. But Meredith wasn't finished. "I ran a background check," she said later that afternoon, "on the man in the footage." I looked up, surprised. "And?" She slid a printed report across the desk. "His name was Joel Mercer, a licensed financial planner. No criminal record, but a reputation that sent a chill down my spine. He'd been named in 2 prior divorce cases, both involving married women, both resulting in messy settlements where the husbands lost more than they should have. The records didn't prove wrongdoing, but the pattern was obvious. He inserted himself into vulnerable marriages, coached the women on how to position themselves financially, and then vanished when the legal dust settled. "He's not just sleeping with her," Meredith said. "He's guiding her. And she thinks she's ahead of me," I murmured, stunned. "Jesus. This isn't about hurt feelings anymore," she continued. "It's about leverage. And now we have the upper hand." That night, I returned home to a house that didn't feel like mine anymore. Claire was in the kitchen. She hadn't cooked, just sat at the table staring at the divorce papers I'd printed 2 days ago. She didn't speak as I walked past her, but I could feel her eyes following me. When I sat on the couch, she finally stood. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice brittle. "About what?" Her lip trembled. "About everything." "I already know everything," I said. "Your reunion? Was it fun?" She didn't answer. I turned toward her. "You were at a hotel with a man named Joel Mercer. That's who he is, right?" Her breath caught. "You thought I wouldn't find out? You thought you'd get the money, maybe drag this out, claim part of the estate." "I didn't," she began, but I cut her off. "I've already frozen the accounts, filed the petition. Your name's off everything that matters. The vineyard, the land, the investments. You'll get served tomorrow." Her shoulders slumped, but I could still see the gears turning in her eyes. This wasn't grief. It wasn't guilt. It was calculation. "You don't have to make this ugly," she said finally. I almost laughed. "It's already ugly. I'm just making sure it's fair." She didn't reply. Instead, she picked up her phone, tapped out a quick message, and walked out of the room. I sat there, exhausted, waiting for the second act to begin. The next few days moved fast. Papers were delivered. Claire retained a lawyer, not just any lawyer, but a family law specialist known for creative negotiation. Her strategy became clear. She was going to argue that we'd commingled the inheritance, that I'd used it to pay for shared expenses, that she was entitled to a cut because of the length of the marriage. But Meredith saw it coming. We prepared a timeline, every asset, every transfer, every receipt. We documented that all major purchases from the estate had been in my name only. No joint accounts were used. Every dollar traced to the inheritance stayed segregated, right down to the vineyard's tax returns. And then we went further. Meredith filed a motion requesting Joel Mercer's deposition. His connection to Claire was no longer personal. He was a financial actor in the relationship, advising her on legal strategies. That made him part of the case. Claire's lawyer pushed back hard, tried to block it. The judge granted it. And just like that, Claire's entire plan began to fracture. I started receiving calls from mutual friends. Some wanted to stay out of it. Others expressed disbelief. One even said, "I always wondered if something was off with her. Guess I was right." What stunned me most was how quickly her image began to unravel. People who once gushed about how put together she was now whispered about how cold, how calculated, how distant she'd become. That Saturday, Claire confronted me again. "This is getting out of control," she snapped. "You're making me look like a monster." I stood in the doorway of my office and stared at her. "I didn't make you anything," I said. "You did that all on your own." She softened for a moment, tried a different angle. "I made a mistake. Can't we just talk about this? Just the two of us?" "We passed that point the moment you invited another man into our home." Her expression flickered. Then, for the first time since this all began, she didn't respond. She just turned and walked away. On Monday, Meredith sent me an update. "We've got enough now to move for exclusive possession of the house during proceedings. If the judge sees Joel's history and Claire's deception, you'll likely get a restraining order preventing her from accessing estate-related assets, including the home." "Do it," I said. That same day, Claire moved out. Not by court order. She just left. Took a few suitcases, some clothes, her makeup drawer. Left the rest. No goodbye. No apology. And I didn't stop her. Later that week, Meredith received confirmation that the court had scheduled a hearing to review Joel Mercer's involvement. If we played our cards right, this would go beyond divorce. Could become a fraud case, one that might expose him fully. I stood on the porch that night, watching the sun disappear behind the trees. The vineyard in Arkansas, the land I hadn't even visited yet, felt like a different world. It wasn't just property anymore. It was a second chance. This wasn't just about winning a case. It was about reclaiming my life. Claire and Joel had played a game. They thought I'd fold. But I was just getting started. There's a strange quiet the morning of a court hearing. Almost like your body knows it's headed into battle and tries to slow time down, just for a second. I felt it as I stood in front of the mirror, tying my tie, adjusting my collar. I didn't look like someone heartbroken. I looked like someone ready for war. Claire hadn't contacted me since she left the house. No messages, no dramatic speeches, not even a fake apology. It was as if she'd decided to vanish until she could reemerge with a ruling in her favor. That silence told me everything. She was counting on the system to do the work for her, to make this about technicalities instead of truth. But I wasn't going in empty-handed. Meredith and I walked through the courthouse doors with a strategy built on facts. Every document had been reviewed 3 times. Every timestamp, every deposit, every financial wall I'd built between my inheritance and our shared accounts was accounted for. We weren't just fighting for money, we were proving intent. That Claire hadn't just cheated on me physically, she had architected a scheme to steal what was never hers to begin with. We were called into court by 9:45. Claire sat across the aisle, flanked by her attorney. She wore a sharp blazer and neutral makeup, subdued, calculated. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering something that made her nod with robotic precision. Joel Mercer wasn't there. Not yet. The judge, a middle-aged woman named Connors, was known for her no-nonsense reputation. Meredith had chosen her court on purpose. Connors didn't play into theatrics, and she had a long history of ruling in favor of protecting separate property. As we waited for the hearing to begin, I studied Claire's face. No guilt, just composure. The same look she gave me the night I held that gold chain in my hand. But as soon as the judge called the session to order, everything changed. Today, we will hear arguments regarding property division and marital entitlements under Arkansas family law. Both parties have submitted financial affidavits and asset declarations. Let's begin with Mr. Brooks' counsel. Meredith stood. Your Honor, we contend that the inheritance received by Mr. Brooks, including but not limited to the vineyard, the land, and all related financial accounts, remains his sole and separate property. We have submitted clear documentation showing no commingling of funds, no joint usage, and no express or implied conversion into marital assets. Furthermore, we have evidence of premeditated behavior on the part of Mrs. Brooks indicating intent to leverage the marriage for financial gain following the inheritance. She handed a binder to the court clerk. It was thick, labeled, organized. Everything from *TS of Claire's research on asset division to her questions about ownership loopholes to receipts showing purchases made without my knowledge or consent. Claire's lawyer stood next. Your Honor, the couple has been married for over 7 years. During that time, Claire has contributed significantly to the household's emotional and logistical stability. Though the inheritance was technically separate, the fruits of it, particularly the vineyard income, were used to cover lifestyle costs that benefited both parties. He paused. We believe this entitles Claire to an equitable share of what, in practical terms, became a marital asset. Connors didn't flinch. Was the vineyard income deposited into a joint account? No, Your Honor, Meredith replied quickly. All payments remained in a segregated business account listed solely under Mr. Brooks' name. Claire's lawyer shifted. Even so, the increase in lifestyle, trips, property improvements, implied joint benefit. Meredith smiled faintly. Your Honor, we also submitted hotel receipts, credit card charges, and surveillance evidence that directly contradicts the notion that the benefit was mutual. Connors raised an eyebrow. Surveillance? Yes, Meredith replied. Mrs. Brooks invited another man into the marital home during working hours while claiming to be on business trips. That man, Joel Mercer, has a documented history of coaching women through high-asset divorces. He is named in 2 previous cases where similar schemes were attempted. That got the judge's attention. Claire shifted for the first time. Her eyes darted toward her attorney, whose jaw visibly tightened. Meredith kept going. We're not just looking at infidelity, Your Honor. We're looking at premeditated exploitation. Mrs. Brooks began researching property loopholes and asset division less than 2 weeks after Mr. Brooks' inheritance was finalized. We have browser histories, drafts of legal inquiries, and emails suggesting a plan was being developed, one involving Mr. Mercer. Claire's lawyer objected. Speculation. It's not speculation if we bring him in, Meredith said. We've already subpoenaed Mr. Mercer for deposition. His connection to Mrs. Brooks is material. The judge turned to Claire's attorney. Is your client prepared to deny the relationship? A long pause. Her attorney leaned toward Claire, whispered something. She shook her head barely. Your Honor, he finally said, we would like to request a recess to confer with our client. The judge nodded once. 15 minutes. Outside the courtroom, Meredith leaned against the wall beside me. They're rattled. She's going to pivot, I said. Try to cry. Shift the tone. Emotional appeal. Meredith nodded. Probably. But it won't stick. We re-entered the courtroom to find Claire with red-rimmed eyes. She'd taken off her blazer, her posture slumped. Now she looked like the victim, like someone who'd just been hit with reality. Her lawyer resumed. Your Honor, my client acknowledges that mistakes were made. Emotional ones. She regrets the direction her choices took and she's willing to forego any claim to the estate itself. However, we believe she's entitled to partial alimony and reimbursement for emotional distress incurred by the marriage breakdown. Connors tilted her head. Let me be clear, are you admitting that the estate is separate? Yes, the lawyer replied. We are not contesting ownership. We are requesting compensation for the sudden lifestyle changes and emotional abandonment following the inheritance. Meredith stepped up calmly. Your Honor, we contend the sudden lifestyle changes were initiated and escalated by Mrs. Brooks' secretive conduct. Mr. Brooks was not withholding resources. He was responding to a betrayal. A betrayal that was not only romantic but strategic. We have every reason to believe she intended to leverage the legal process to access an inheritance she had no legal claim to. The judge folded her hands. Enough. I'll review the files and issue an initial ruling on asset separation within 10 business days. Alimony, if considered, will be addressed after Mr. Mercer's deposition. And just like that, the gavel came down. We walked out into the sunlit steps of the courthouse. Claire didn't look at me. Didn't try. Her lawyer rushed her into a car, already on the phone. She's bleeding now, Meredith said. And we haven't even hit the vein. That night, I sat on the back porch with a glass of wine from the vineyard I now owned entirely. I looked out at the oak trees and realized the truth. She hadn't just tried to cheat on me, she tried to erase me. Rewrite our story to make me the obstacle. The fool. The one holding her back. But the courts didn't see it that way. And neither did I anymore.